I brought the Christmas gift to my father's house in postcard-perfect North Harbor. My stepmother tore the paper, then slammed the box into my shoulder, her nails digging a long scratch. Dad just sighed, eyes locked on the football game. "You have to try harder," I smiled, picked up the fallen ribbon, and quietly started the recorder on my watch. That night, I decided if money and proof were the only languages this family spoke, I would become fluent in both. My name is Rowan Blake. I am 29 years old, and for the last 6 years, I have worked in medical quality assurance at North Star Diagnostics. My job is to find deviations, to spot the anomalies in data that others miss, to ensure that what is claimed is what is real. I am good at my job. Last month, they promoted me to manager. I have a team of 12, a new parking space, and a salary that finally allowed me to move out of a shared apartment and into my own small place in Maple Row. This new stability felt like armor as I drove the 2 hours north to North Harbor, Vermont. North Harbor is the kind of town that ends up on puzzles. It's aggressively quaint, nestled by a lake that freezes into a perfect mirror, its shoreline dotted with expensive, rustic modern cabins. Tonight, on Christmas Eve, it was drowning in a thick, wet snow. Every pine tree wore a heavy white cloak, and every roofline dripped with meticulously hung, warm white LED lights. It was beautiful, sterile, and cold. My father's house was the largest on the point. Elena, my stepmother, had convinced him to tear down the original A-frame my mother loved and build this glass and timber monument to good taste. As I pulled up the heated driveway, I could see the party through the floor-to-ceiling windows. It wasn't a large party, just the requisite neighbors validates their status. I took a breath, the cold air stinging my lungs. In my passenger seat sat the gift. It felt heavy. I walked in, stamping the snow from my boots onto the imported slate of the entryway. The house smelled exactly as it always did, a powerful, chemical blast of cinnamon, pine, and perhaps baked apples, all warring for dominance. It was the smell of a plug-in diffuser working overtime. "Rowan, darling, you made it?" Elena Voss emerged from the great room. She was 50-something, but looked a decade younger, encased in a cream-colored cashmere dress that probably cost more than my first car. Her blonde hair was perfect, her smile dazzling. Elena was the director of the Harbor Grace Foundation, the town's primary philanthropic organization. She was Saint Elena of the Lakeside, the woman who clothed the cold and fed the hungry, and she never let anyone forget it. "Elena, Merry Christmas. And you, dear." Graham is in his usual spot. My father, Graham Blake, was sunk deep into his black leather recliner, his back to the polite chatter of the party, his attention locked on a baseball game, a replay. From 1998, he loved the past, provided it was someone else's. He was a man defined by what he avoided, which was, primarily, conflict. He was 60, silver-haired, and muted. "Hey, Dad," he grunted, raising a hand but not turning. "Rowan, traffic was bad." "It's Christmas Eve," I said. "It's always bad." I held the gift. "This is for both of you, or for Elena, mostly." This got her attention. She glided over, hands clasped. "Rowan, you shouldn't have." Her voice was honey poured over glass. I handed her the box. It was heavy, wrapped in thick gold paper. I had brought wine for the neighbors. But this was the real gift. This was the test. "Go on," I urged. Elena sat on the edge of a stiff, decorative armchair. She unwrapped it with surgical precision, folding the paper as she went. She lifted the lid of the box and pulled out the digital photo frame. It was sleek, dark wood, high resolution. "Oh," she said. "How modern." "I preloaded it," I said, my voice too quiet. "I scanned a lot of Mom's old pictures. I thought you'd like to have them. There's a letter, too." The frame, plugged in at the store, was set to initialize on opening. The screen flickered to life. The first image was a photo of my mother, Maeve Hollis. She was young, maybe 22, laughing on the dock of the old A-frame. her hair wild. Elena's face did something I had never seen it do. The perfect, polished mask of the Harbor Grace Foundation director didn't just slip. It shattered. It crumpled for 1/2 second into something raw and ugly, pure, unadulterated loathing. Then the rage came. It was so fast I didn't have time to flinch. Her face hardened, and with a hiss, she stood up. She didn't throw the frame. She stepped toward me, grabbed my upper arm with one hand, and slammed the hard, wooden edge of the frame directly into my shoulder. The impact was sharp, a distinct crack of wood against bone. It wasn't a slap. It was a strike, precise and intentional. "How dare you?" she whispered, her voice a venomous hiss that only I could hear. Her grip tightened, her perfect, French manicured nails digging through my sweater and into my skin. "You bring her into my home? On Christmas?" I just stared, frozen. The frame clattered to the floor. The screen went black. I looked past her, to my father. He had turned. Finally. He saw the frame on the floor. He saw my face. He saw his wife, rigid with fury. Her hand still clawed on my arm. The entire scene hung in the air, silent except for the distant murmur of the television announcer listing off batting averages. My father, Graham Blake, looked at me, his eyes empty of everything but a deep, profound exhaustion. He sighed, a rattling sound. He turned back to the television. "You have to try harder, Rowan." His words hit me harder than the frame did. The television screen, dark during a commercial break, reflected the room back at me, a perfect, cold painting. Elena, trembling with rage. Me, a statue. And my father, a silhouette ignoring it all. The neighbors hadn't noticed. They were laughing by the fireplace. Elena released me, smoothing her cashmere dress. She looked down at the frame, then at me. Her expression one of utter contempt. She turned and walked away. My shoulder throbbed. I knew. Beneath the wool, her nails had broken the skin. The spot where the frame hit was already aching, a deep, blooming pain. I did not cry. I did not yell. My job is to observe, to document. Slowly, I bent down. The gold ribbon from the gift lay on the polished floor like a drop of blood. I picked it up, my fingers methodical. As I straightened, I kept my hand low, by my hip. I pressed the small, flat button on the side of my smartwatch, holding it for 3 seconds. A tiny, imperceptible vibration against my wrist confirmed it. The microphone was active. The recording started, capturing the sounds of the room, the crackle of the fire, the polite laughter of the guests, and the sound of my father's baseball game resuming. I slipped the ribbon into my pocket. Dinner was a performance of agonizing normalcy. We sat at the long, polished dining table, set for 8. Elena, seated at the head, was radiant again. The mask seamlessly reapplied. She was describing the triumph of the recent Harbor Grace Foundation gala. "We were just so blessed," she said, cutting into her prime rib. "The community really stepped up for the winter relief drive. We'll be able to provide coats and essentials for, we think, nearly 700 children this season." Mr. Miller, our neighbor, raised his wineglass. "To Elena, North Harbor wouldn't be the same without you." "Here, here," my father murmured, staring at his plate. I watched Elena accept the praise, her eyes sparkling. The woman who, 20 minutes ago, had assaulted me for the crime of remembering my dead mother. My shoulder was a knot of fire. "Rowan, dear, you've been so quiet," Elena said, her eyes pinning me. "How is work at North Star?" "It's good," I said. My voice was even. "I was promoted. I'm a manager now." "Oh, how wonderful," she beamed. "We're so proud of you. All that paperwork, it sounds dreadfully dull, but I'm glad you enjoy it." I smiled. "It's about finding the truth in the details. I like it." Her smile tightened by a millimeter. I felt my phone buzz in my pocket. I waited until Elena had turned her attention back to the Millers, then slipped it out below the tablecloth. It was a text from Tess Marine. Tess and I had been friends since college. She was smart, cynical, and now worked as junior in-house counsel for one of the largest banks in Vermont. The text was short. We need to talk about Harbor Grace. I was reviewing community reinvestment portfolios and something's off. Call me tomorrow. Seriously. I read the text twice. I looked up from the phone, at the white lights twinkling on the massive, perfectly decorated tree in the corner. I looked at Elena, who was laughing, her head tilted back. I looked at my father, who was dutifully eating his dinner, keeping the peace. Something's off. I placed my napkin on the table. "Rowan?" my father asked, noticing the movement. "I have to go," I said, standing up. "It's a long drive, and the snow is getting worse." Elena stood, the perfect hostess. "So soon? But you barely ate, and we have dessert." "I have an early start. Thank you for dinner." I didn't look at her. I looked at my father. "Dad?" He just nodded, his gaze slipping back to the empty fireplace. I went to the entryway, pulled on my boots, and shrugged into my heavy coat. The motion sent a sharp, agonizing spike of pain from my shoulder down to my elbow. I bit back a gasp. I walked out of the house. I did not say Merry Christmas. The cold hit me like a physical blow, a clean, sharp contrast to the suffocating, scented warmth of the house. The snow was falling thick and fast, muffling the world in a profound, white silence. The only sound was the crunch of my boots. I got into my car and sat for a long moment, the engine off. I looked at the house, a glowing jewel box of warmth and light, a perfect postcard of a perfect family. The pain in my shoulder was white hot. It was real, in a life of polite fictions, forced smiles, and weaponized avoidance. That pain was an anchor. It was the only true thing that had happened all night. It was the deviation in the data. I turned the key, and the engine rumbled to life. I drove away from the lake, the image of the house shrinking in my rearview mirror. I vowed, in the silence of the car, that this was the last time, the last holiday I would spend pretending, the last time I would try harder to be the person they needed me to be, the quiet, forgetful daughter. Next year, Christmas Eve would be different. I reached up and gently touched the recorder on my watch, stopping the file and saving it. Next year would be different, I thought, because it would start with the truth. My apartment in Maple Row is small, but it is mine. It is clean, smells like nothing, and is filled with books and quiet. It is the antithesis of my father's house. I returned from North Harbor well after midnight, the snowstorm chasing me south. I took 2 extra strength painkillers, undressed, and looked at my shoulder in the bathroom mirror. It was already a deep, angry purple, a perfect rectangle stamped into my skin. Where her nails had dug into my arm, 4 small half-moons were weeping plasma. I documented it. I held my phone up, the flash cold and bright, and took 3 pictures, clear, high-resolution, data. I sat on my sofa, the city silent under the blanket of snow, and plugged my watch into my laptop. I transferred the audio file. It was 48 minutes long. I put on my best headphones, the noise-canceling ones I use for work, and I listened. Most of it was useless, the clinking of silver, the murmur of the neighbors, the muffled sound of the baseball game. I fast-forwarded to the part I needed. The minute before dinner, Elena's voice, no longer the warm, honeyed tone of the hostess, but a low, acidic hiss. "You bring her into my home on Christmas?" And then, later, the sound of my chair pushing back, the silence as I looked to him, and my father's voice, not angry, just tired, dead tired. "You have to try harder, Rowan." I saved the file. I backed it up to a secure cloud server. I emailed a copy to myself with an innocuous subject line, Q4 audio notes. Then I listened to his words one more time. You have to try harder. He was right. Tess came over on the 26th. She brought coffee in a thick manila folder. She wore her work clothes, a sharp gray suit, even on the day after Christmas. "Your text," I said, handing her a mug. It was specific, Harbor Grace. "It was," she said, She snapped open the folder on my small dining table. I was reviewing our bank's community grant applications, standard end-of-year stuff. Elena's foundation applied for a bridge loan for their winter fund. It was denied, not by me, but it put Harbor Grace on my desk. She slid a document across the table. This is their latest Form 990, public record. I picked it up. My job is to read documents like this, to find the gaps between what is claimed and what is verifiable. I scanned the expenditures, salaries, fundraising, administrative. Then I saw the line Tess had already highlighted. Program services, I read. Cold weather logistics and distribution, $212,000. That's a lot of coats, Tess said, sipping her coffee. In fact, it's almost 40% of their entire annual programming budget. I thought she just gave coats to churches. That number looks like an international shipping operation. I looked closer. Who's the vendor? That's the fun part. Tess pulled another sheet. 3 invoices, attached as justification in the grant proposal. North River Freight, paid in 3 installments, October, November, December. Never heard of them, I said. Neither has anyone else. They were incorporated 6 months ago. Their registered address is a mail drop in Mill Point, the industrial park over the bridge. I looked at the invoices. They were almost laughably generic. Freight services, logistical support, no itemization, no cost per unit, just a flat number, and a signature, a digital authorization at the bottom of each one. Dax Sutter. The name hit me like a physical shock. I hadn't heard it in at least 10 years. Dax Sutter. He'd been the handsome, slightly sleazy tennis pro at the North Harbor Country Club. He was also the subject of a very quiet, very expensive scandal when I was in high school. The scandal that involved him, Elena, and my father suddenly donating a new clay court to the club to make it all go away. Dax had disappeared shortly after. You know him? Tess asked, watching my face. He's an old acquaintance of Elena's, I said. Well, her old acquaintance is now the sole proprietor of a logistics company that just received over $200,000 from her charity. This was no longer a mistake. This was a pattern. My mind went into QA mode. She talked about the gala, I said, thinking aloud. I need to see the photos. I opened my laptop, went to the Harbor Grace Foundation website. The homepage was dominated by a slick photo gallery, Winter Gala 2024. I clicked. There she was, St. Elena, in a silver dress, holding a microphone. There she was, posing with the town's interim mayor, the man who also, conveniently, headed the state grant committee. The political connections were woven directly into the charity's fabric. I kept the website open and pulled up the invoices again. I compared the dates. First invoice paid to North River Freight, October 10th. Second invoice paid, November 2nd. Third invoice paid, December 5th. The blog post on the foundation's site, announcing the launch of the Children's Winter Coat Drive, December 6th. Look at this, I said, turning the laptop to Tess. She paid the bulk of the money before the drive even started. She paid for the coats before the money for the coats was even raised. She was bridging, Tess said, using general funds to pay her friend, planning to backfill it with gala money in our grant, which she didn't get. She didn't buy coats, Tess, I said. She bought silence, or complicity. Tess leaned back, her expression hardening. This is bad. Rowan, this is felony-level bad. This is wire fraud, embezzlement, tax fraud. I was quiet. I was thinking about my mother. I left Tess with the documents and went into my bedroom. I closed the door and called my aunt, June Hollis, my mother's older sister. She was a florist in Oregon. Practical, tough, and the only person left who spoke of my mother as a real person. Rowan, Merry Christmas. Honey, I didn't expect to hear from you. Aunt June, I need to ask you about Mom and about Elena. The silence on the line was heavy, crackling with static. Your mother was no fool. Rowan, June said finally, her voice tight. She was an artist, But she was practical. She saw people, and she saw Elena. She used to say Elena wore other people's kindness like a fur coat, something she could take off and put in a closet when she was done. Did she ever say anything specific? About money? About a foundation? Another pause. Maeve kept things. She was a meticulous record keeper after she got sick, but before it got bad, she set up a safe deposit box, not with Graham, at the old Pine and Birch Bank on Main Street, the one that's a coffee shop now. The boxes are still there, in the old vault. She told me, if Rowan ever needs to know the truth, the key is with her godmother. I'm her godmother, Rowan. My blood went cold. She left a box. She did. I'll overnight you the key and the authorization papers. After I hung up, I felt a strange, cold energy. This was no longer just about Elena. It was about Maeve. I went back to my laptop. I logged into the North Star Diagnostics employee portal. My new manager credentials gave me access to my full HR file. I clicked, scrolling past my recent promotion, my salary adjustments, my insurance. I went all the way back to my initial hiring paperwork, 6 years ago, my W-4, my direct deposit, and my emergency contact form. Primary contact, Graham Blake. Secondary contact, Elena Voss. I stared at it. I had filled this out when I was 23, desperate for my first real job. My mother had been dead for years. My father was my primary. But Elena? I had no memory of writing her name. Had my father told me to? Had she? For 6 years, the person my company would call if I was in a coma, if I was dead, was the woman who hit me with a picture of my mother. It was a detail, a small, cold, terrifying detail of ownership. She hadn't just taken my father's house. She had, in her own quiet way, laid claim to my life. I called Tess back. "We need to slow down," I said. "Slow down?" she said. "Rowan, I'm looking at 3 counts of fraud." "I know, but you said it yourself. Elena is connected. She's the town's darling. We pull this thread. The whole web shakes. We need more. We need something undeniable." "Rowan, what could be more undeniable than invoices from her ex-boyfriend's shell company?" "Proof the coats don't exist," I said. The next day, the anonymous email arrived. It came to my personal account, not my work one. The sender was a string of random numbers from a secure, encrypted service. The subject line was just 2 words: North Harbor. Inside was a single, grainy photograph. It was taken at night, clearly from a long distance, but it was unmistakable. Elena's white SUV, parked in the loading bay of a bleak, metal-sided warehouse. The sign on the building, barely legible in the spill of a single security light, said, North River Freight. The timestamp in the corner read, December 27th, 8:15 p.m. Below the photo was one line of text. "Follow her perfume. It always covers the rot." My hands were shaking. Someone else was watching her. Someone who knew about the warehouse, who knew Elena, who knew her perfume. I didn't tell Tess. This was mine. That night, I drove to Mill Point. The industrial park was a ghost town, just rows of dark warehouses and empty truck depots. I found North River Freight. It was the darkest of all. I parked 2 streets over and walked, staying in the shadows. A single black Dodge Ram was parked near the loading bay. Dax Sutter's truck. I recognized it from a decade ago. I waited. The cold was brutal, seeping through my boots. After an hour, a figure emerged from a side door. It was Dax. He looked older, heavier, but it was him. He lit a cigarette, the cherry glowing in the dark. I watched him. I'm a QA manager. I observe, I document. He finished his cigarette, tossed it, and went back inside. I moved, slipping from shadow to shadow until I was at the edge of the loading dock. It was stacked with flat-packed cardboard boxes. The shipping labels were pre-printed. Apparel, winter, XL Kids, they read. I pulled out my phone. Brightness turned all the way down. I photographed the boxes. I photographed the shipping seals, getting close-ups of the serial numbers. I put my hand on the nearest box, expecting the weight of winter coats. My hand almost went through it. It was empty. I tapped it. A hollow, flat sound. I moved to the next one. Empty. And the next. Empty. These were props. Stage dressing for a phantom shipment. He was shipping nothing. Elena was paying him $200,000 for empty boxes and his signature. I backed away, melting back into the darkness. As I got to my car, my mind was racing. The money, the ex-lover, the empty boxes. It was a clean case. But one thing still bothered me, the seed money. Where did the foundation start? When I got home, I didn't sleep. I dug into the North Harbor public records. I went to the Church Historical Archives, digitized online, the Harbor Grace Foundation. Established 10 years ago, I searched for its founding donors. Most were small, local businesses. Then, one, an anonymous benefactor. The donation was listed at $150,000. I opened another tab. North Harbor County Property Records. I searched for my father, Graham Blake, 10 years ago. He had sold a 20-acre parcel of undeveloped lakeshore property. The sale date was March 2nd. The anonymous benefactor donation to Harbor Grace was made on March 3rd. He had sold the land my mother, Maeve, had inherited from her parents, the land she had always said she would build a small art studio on. When the time was right. Elena hadn't just started a charity. She had started it by convincing my father to liquidate my mother's legacy and pour it, anonymously, into her own. I looked at the data spread across my desk, the 990, the photo of the empty box, the safe deposit box lead, the land sale record. This wasn't just fraud. This was a systematic erasure. I decided then, this would be a two-pronged attack. Tess could have the money. I would take the history. I would reclaim the family. The key and the notarized power of attorney from Aunt June arrived in a FedEx envelope 2 days later. The Pine and Birch Bank was, as June had said, no longer a bank. It was a high-end coffee shop called The Daily Grind, all exposed brick and reclaimed wood. But the town's historical society had insisted the original vault be preserved as a feature. It stood in the back, a massive, blackened steel circle, its door permanently ajar, leading to a small, quiet room. I showed my papers to the manager, who then produced a bank-uniformed woman I hadn't noticed. She was from the main branch, a vault custodian, and she looked bored. She led me into the small, carpeted room, which was lined with the original brass-fronted safe deposit boxes. "Box 722, I said, my voice sounding too loud in the confined space. She consulted her ledger, slotted her master key in beside the lock, and then stepped back. "I'll be at the counter when you're ready to lock it back up." She left, pulling the heavy door almost closed, leaving me in the humming, air-conditioned silence. I inserted the key June had sent. The lock clicked, a precise, expensive sound. I pulled out the long, narrow metal box. It was surprisingly heavy. I sat at the single, small desk provided for clients and lifted the lid. The smell hit me first, not the musty dampness of an attic, but the dry, sharp scent of old, high-quality paper, metal, and a faint, lingering trace of my mother's perfume, the one I barely remembered. Lavender and ink. There were only a few items inside, perfectly organized. On top was a thick, cream-colored envelope. My name was on it, written in my mother's elegant, architectural script. Rowan, below it, she had written, "For my daughter, when she is strong enough to read." I looked at the postmark. There was none. It was a letter never sent. In the corner, she had dated it. December 24th, 18 years ago, the last Christmas she was healthy. My hands were shaking. I slid my finger under the seal. The letter was 12 pages long, written on her personal stationery. "My dearest Rowan," it began. "If you are reading this, I am gone, and you are old enough to understand the difference between a tragedy and a plan. Your father, Graham, is a good man, but he is a quiet man. He sees the world as he wishes it were, not as it is. and the world he wishes for is one without conflict. My eyes scanned the pages, my heart pounding a sick, slow rhythm. She wrote about her illness, her hopes for me, her love for me. Then the tone changed. I need to warn you, Rowan, about Elena. She is not just ambitious, she is hollow. She is a person who builds herself out of the pieces of other people. When she first came to work for your father, she was just an assistant. Now, she is his entire world, and she has a new project, the Harbor Grace Foundation. My breath caught. It sounds wonderful, I know. The letter continued. A charity for the town, but I have seen things. I hosted a dinner for your father's firm 2 months ago. I overheard Elena talking to Bill Peterson from the town council. She was encouraging him to make sure the spring paving contract went to Northwood Asphalt. 3 days later, Northwood made a $5,000 donation to Harbor Grace. Last week, I saw her having lunch with the mayor. She was laughing about how all the town suppliers were finally learning to be part of the community. She is using the town contracts as leverage. She is telling people that to get business from the town, they must first give to her foundation. It was the genesis. It was the same model as the winter coat drive, just scaled up. Not a shell company yet, but extortion, veiled as philanthropy. Tucked into the last page of the letter was a small, folded piece of paper, a list. It had 5 names on it. 4 were suppliers I didn't recognize. The 5th, circled in red ink, was Arthur Pence. I knew that name. Arthur Pence had been my father's CFO, his most trusted colleague for 20 years. And then, when I was in college, he was suddenly gone. A sudden retirement, they'd said. He and his wife moved to Arizona. No one heard from them again. My mother, in the margin, had written, Arthur found the discrepancy. He argued with Graham. Elena had him fired 2 weeks later. Graham let her. This was what Elena had been protecting my father from. Not the world. She was protecting her own operation from my father. Beneath the letter was a small, velvet pouch. I opened it. A single, small, ornate brass key fell into my palm. It was wrapped in a thin, faded red silk ribbon. It was not a safe deposit box key. It was a furniture key, a diary key. I had no idea what it unlocked. Next was a photograph. A simple 4x6 print. It was my father and my mother, standing on the dock of the old A-frame cabin, the one Elena had torn down. They were young, vibrant. My father was holding my mother from behind, his arms around her waist, his chin resting on her shoulder. They were both smiling, squinting into the sun. And in the background, standing near the doorway of the cabin, partially obscured by shadow, was Elena. I had never seen this picture before. She wasn't smiling. She was watching them. She was wearing a simple blouse, and her hair was dark. She was just an assistant, a shadow, already waiting in the wings, watching the life she intended to take. The final item in the box was a document, held by a paperclip. It was a draft of my mother's will. I scanned it. It detailed the usual bequests: the house to my father, her jewelry to me and June. And then, I hereby direct the sum of $120,000 from the sale of my stock portfolio to be placed in trust to establish the Hollis Scholarship, to be awarded annually to one female student of medicine at the University of Vermont. $120,000. The Hollis Scholarship, it had never existed. I packed the box, locked it, and walked out of the coffee shop into the bright, cold afternoon, the small red key heavy in my pocket. I sat in my car and called Tess. Hey, she said, I'm just leaving the office. What's up? I have a hypothetical for you, I said, my voice flat. What happens if someone sets up a private scholarship in their will, and it just never appears? Tess was silent for a beat. That's not a hypothetical, is it? My mother, Maeve, she left a letter, a will draft. She wanted to set up the Hollis Scholarship. I've never heard of it, Tess said. Neither have I. The will was probated. My father was the executor. If the scholarship vanished, where did the money go? Hold on, Tess said. This is my world now. Probate. Foundations. Give me an hour. I can check the state registry of charitable trusts. If a trust was created, it has to be filed. If it was dissolved, that also has to be filed. I waited. The 60 minutes stretched into an eternity. I sat in my car, staring at the photo of my mother and father, at the shadow in the background. My phone rang. It was Tess. "Okay," she said, her voice all business. The Hollis Scholarship was indeed established. It existed, on paper. For exactly 2 years after your mother's death, it was funded, as per her will, with $120,000. So what happened to it? On April 3rd, 16 years ago, a motion was filed by the executor of Maeve Hollis's estate, your father, to merge the assets of the Hollis Scholarship with a larger local philanthropic organization. To better serve the community and reduce administrative overhead, the motion was approved. The Hollis Scholarship and its money were absorbed by the Harbor Grace Foundation. The breath left my body in a single painful rush. She didn't just build her foundation on my mother's land. She had funded it by swallowing my mother's legacy. She had erased her. I looked at the small red key in my hand. Then I thought of the digital photo frame, smashed on the floor. It was the same act, years apart. The destruction of Maeve Hollis. This changed everything. The North River freight fraud was the how. This was the why. I needed the town records. My mother's letter was the map. The town contracts were the proof. The North Harbor Town Hall archive was in the basement, a low-ceilinged room that smelled of dust and old glue. The archivist, Mr. Kell, was a wisp of a man in a cardigan, and he seemed delighted to have a visitor. "Hello, dear. What can we help you find?" "I'm doing some research on local philanthropic organizations," I said, giving him my most professional, non-threatening smile. "I'd like to see the vendor contracts and gala permits for the Harbor Grace Foundation, say from the last 5 years. "Oh, the foundation," he said, brightening. "Wonderful. What Elena Voss has done. Just wonderful." He led me to a set of rolling file cabinets and pulled open a long drawer. "Here we are. Harbor Grace. The permits should be here. The vendor and bidding contracts. Those are in binders, by year." He went to a shelf. He frowned. "That's odd." "What is it?" "The binder. The master binder for community contracts and bids. It's not here." He looked at the empty space on the shelf. "I'm so sorry, dear. It appears to be checked out." "Can you tell who has it?" I asked, keeping my voice light. "Of course. We're very strict here." He tottered over to a desk and flipped open a large, leather-bound sign-out ledger. He ran his finger down the page. "Ah, yes. Here we are. It was checked out just last week." He peered at the signature. My heart was pounding. I already knew. "It's Ashley Voss," he said, turning the book for me to see. "Elena's daughter. Such a bright girl. She said she was gathering materials for the gala program. Hasn't returned it yet." I stared at the name, Ashley Voss, her confident, looping signature. It wasn't just Elena covering her tracks. She was using her own daughter to do it. They weren't just erasing the past. They were actively curating it, removing it from the public record. I thanked Mr. Kell, my smile feeling like a mask. I walked out into the cold air, the small red key clutched tight in my fist. This wasn't just a family breaking apart. This was a conspiracy, and I was going to be the one to document it. 3 days after I visited the vault, my phone rang. It was Elena. Her voice was liquid warmth, as if Christmas Eve had never happened. "Rowan, darling, I feel just terrible about the holidays. Everything was so rushed. Your father and I would love to have you back. Just us. A real family dinner. To talk. A reconciliation." The word reconciliation hung in the air. A perfectly constructed trap. It implied I had done something that needed forgiving. "When?" I asked. "Tonight, 8 o'clock. I'm making your father's favorite roast chicken." "I'll be there," I said. I drove back to North Harbor. This time, there were no guests, no party. The house was quiet. As I pulled up, I saw the stage had been meticulously set for a different kind of performance. The long, formal dining table was set for 4, complete with candles, chargers, and linen napkins, and the photos, they were everywhere. She had rearranged the living room, the mantel, the side tables, the entryway console, all now displayed framed pictures from the Harbor Grace Winter Gala. Elena shaking hands with the interim mayor. Elena accepting a comically large check from the president of the local bank. Elena, hand on heart, listening to a donor. It was a museum of her own benevolence. Graham was exactly where I had left him, sunk deep in the leather recliner. A basketball game was on, the volume low. "Dad." He turned, startled, as if surprised to see me. "Rowan, good. You're here." He cleared his throat. "So, that new job, is it stable?" "Yes, Dad, it's very stable." Good. He nodded, his duty done, and his eyes drifted back to the screen. Then Ashley Voss walked down the main staircase, and the dynamic of the room snapped into focus. At 23, she was Elena's younger, sleeker, darker-haired echo. She wore expensive jeans and a silk blouse, and her smile was just as bright, just as practiced. She was the understudy, waiting for her turn. "Rowan, hi," she chirped, air-kissing the space near my cheek. "It's so great you're here. Mom was so worried after Christmas." "I brought wine," I said, holding up the heavy bottle of Cabernet, a peace offering. "Oh, darling, you shouldn't have," Elena said, gliding in from the kitchen. She took the bottle, her fingers brushing mine. Her skin was cold. "That's lovely. Let me just put this on the sideboard." As she turned her back, her attention on the wine, I made my move. "Let me just hang up my coat." I moved to the entryway, to the antique wooden key rack that hung by the door. Graham's keys, Ashley's, and Elena's. Her fob was a large, tacky plastic square bearing the Harbor Grace Foundation logo. My hand went into my pocket. My fingers closed around the small, white, adhesive-backed AirTag. Ashley and Graham were in the great room. Elena was in the dining room. I was alone, shielded by the alcove of the door. With my back to the room, I peeled the backing from the tag. I lifted Elena's keys from the hook, pressed the disc firmly to the back of the logo fob, and hung them back up. It took 3 seconds. I hung my coat and turned around. "Smells wonderful, Elena." We sat at the table. It was, as I suspected, a performance. Ashley, seated opposite me, was the opening act. "The gala wrap-up has just been incredible," she said, unfolding her napkin. "The Harbor Ledger is calling it the philanthropic event of the season. It's honestly amazing, Mom, what you've built." She turned her bright, sharp eyes to me. "It's just so much more than people think. It takes real finesse to manage all those moving parts. The donors, the town council, the logistics. It's not just sitting at a desk and checking boxes." The dig was deliberate, meant to echo my father's words. You have to try harder. I was being characterized as the stubborn, clumsy, artless child who didn't understand the delicate dance of their world. "It sounds complex," I said, my voice neutral. "It is," Elena said, smiling, taking the baton from her daughter. "Which is why we're so glad you're here, Rowan." She leaned forward, her face a mask of earnest sincerity. The candles flickered in her eyes. "I've been doing a lot of thinking about the future, about family, and with your new promotion, you're clearly skilled in management, compliance, quality control." I felt my blood run cold. "The foundation is growing so quickly," she continued, "and to be perfectly honest, I need someone on the board I can trust, someone with a sharp eye, who understands the importance of procedure." She placed her hand on the table, palm up. "Rowan, I would like to formally offer you a seat on the board of directors of the Harbor Grace Foundation." The room was silent, save for the distant squeak of sneakers from the television. It was a brilliant move, a master stroke. Put me inside the organization, make me a fiduciary, bind me with the same legal responsibilities she had. If I found something, and I was on the board, I would be legally complicit, I would be silenced, or I would be incriminating myself. It was checkmate. Ashley was beaming. Mom, that's perfect. Rowan, you have to. It would be the perfect way to bring the family together. We have to support each other. That's what family does. I manufactured a look of stunned surprise. Elena, Ashley, I don't know what to say. That's an incredible offer. Say yes, Ashley insisted. I looked down, pretending to be overwhelmed. It's a huge responsibility. My new role at North Star is taking up so much of my time. I wouldn't want to accept if I couldn't give it my all. I looked up, meeting Elena's gaze. Can I think about it? Maybe look over the bylaws, the meeting schedules? I had given her the perfect, responsible daughter excuse, an acceptance, wrapped in a delay. Elena's smile tightened. Just a fraction. She had wanted a yes, right then, but she had to accept. Of course, dear. Take all the time you need. We just want this to be a true partnership. You want to neutralize me. I thought. Dinner was served. The roast chicken, root vegetables. Elena was in high spirits, telling an anecdote about the mayor's wife. Graham ate silently, his attention divided. Elena lifted the small silver salt cellar. Rowan, salt? Before I could answer, she slipped, her wrist tilted, and the entire contents of the cellar, a small, white pyramid of kosher salt, dumped directly onto my serving of chicken. Oh, my goodness, she gasped, her hand flying to her chest, her eyes wide with fake horror. How utterly clumsy of me. Rowan, I am so dreadfully sorry. Let me get you a new plate. Ashley stifled a small, cruel giggle. My father didn't look up. It was a childish, petty, calculated act of humiliation, a power play. I can ruin your food. I can spoil what is yours, and I will smile while I do it. I looked at the pile of salt. I looked at Elena. I smiled. A small, calm smile. It's perfectly fine. Elena, no need. I picked up my knife and fork. I scraped the mound of salt to the side of the plate, sectioning it off. Then I cut a piece of the chicken from the untouched side and ate it. Delicious. I watched the light in Elena's eyes flicker. I had refused to be the victim. I had not reacted. I had documented the aggression, and I had neutralized it. The rest of the meal was a blur of polite chatter. We moved to the living room for coffee. Ashley, seated on the sofa opposite my armchair, had her phone face up on the cushion beside her. She was scrolling through Instagram, but the volume of her likes was a performance of boredom. Then, her phone buzzed. The screen lit up. A banner notification from a messaging app I didn't recognize. The sender. Dax S. The message. Crate pickup confirmed 7 a.m. tomorrow. Storage, Seth. Ashley saw me see it. In one frantic motion, she snatched the phone, her face flushing a deep, guilty red. She tapped a reply, her thumbs flying, and then shoved the phone into her back pocket. Work, she muttered, not looking at me. Always bothering me. Storage 7 a.m. tomorrow. She wasn't just Elena's daughter, hiding the town's records. She was a co-conspirator. She was coordinating logistics with Dax Sutter. I stood up. The coffee was wonderful, Elena, but I really should be heading back. It's a long drive. So soon? Elena said, the picture of a disappointed mother. I have to early start. I walked to the entryway, Elena and Graham following me. As I collected my things, I heard Elena whisper to Graham, her voice loud enough for me to hear. See? I told you. She just needed a little attention. She'll soften up. She'll come around. I put on my coat, the AirTag, a secret weight in the air. I nodded to my father. I smiled at Elena. I got in my car. I pulled out of the driveway, turned the corner, and parked under a streetlight 2 blocks away. I opened the Find My app on my phone. A small blue dot labeled Elena's keys was pulsing, stationary, inside the house. My phone vibrated. A text from Tess. It's done. The civil preservation order is filed. Judge signed it. They'll be served tomorrow morning. They can't destroy, move, or alter any files, digital or physical, related to Harbor Grace finances. They are legally frozen. Remember, stick to the contracts and the money. Do not touch the Foundation's child recipient data. That's a different, sealed world. We have them on the fraud. That's enough. I stared at the text. Serve tomorrow morning. I looked at the clock. It was 9:30 p.m. 7 a.m. tomorrow. Storage 7. Dax was moving the evidence, the empty boxes, the false inventory, hours before the servers would even knock on Elena's door. They weren't destroying the files. They were destroying the physical proof. I put the car in drive, but I didn't go home. I drove to the Mill Point Industrial Park, and I waited. The blue dot on my screen was my new anchor. I would watch it all night if I had to. The blue dot on my phone pulsed. Stationary. For an hour, then 2. I sat in my parked car, 2 blocks from my father's house, the engine off, the cold seeping into my bones. I was running on adrenaline and the dregs of Elena's bitter coffee. I watched the clock on my dashboard flip past 11 p.m., then midnight. I was resigning myself to an all-night vigil, waiting for a 7 a.m. departure. At 12:17 a.m., the dot moved. It wasn't a slow, casual drift. It moved with purpose, exiting the house, sliding down the long driveway, and turning onto the main road. Not toward my apartment. It was heading north, toward Mill Point. My heart hammered against my ribs. They weren't waiting until morning. They were moving now. I started my car, my headlights off, and gave the dot a 2-minute lead before I pulled onto the road. The Find My app was my only guide. I kept 3 cars between me and where I assumed the key was. A ghost chasing a digital signal through the sleeping, snow-covered town. The dot led me out of the residential neighborhoods, across the bridge, and into the bleak, flat expanse of the Mill Point Industrial Park. It came to a stop at the very back of the park, a dead-end street lined with identical, featureless warehouses. It stopped at the one marked Storage 7. I killed my engine and lights, parking at the far end of the street, shielded by a snowdrift. I watched. Dax Sutter's black Dodge Ram was parked near the loading bay, but there was another car, a late model, dark blue Audi, Ashley's car. Elena's keys were with her daughter. I got out of my car. The silence of the industrial park was absolute, broken only by the high, thin whine of the wind. The air was frigid, sharp as glass in my lungs. I moved along the shadow line of the buildings. Storage 7 was dark, but not entirely. A single weak security light flickered above a side door, illuminating a patch of rust-stained metal. The main security camera, mounted on the corner of the roof, was pointed uselessly at the sky, its bracket clearly broken. Convenient. I crept toward the loading bay, staying low. Dax's truck was backed up to the dock. The bay door was rolled up just enough for a person to duck under. I heard voices from inside, a man's low rumble, Dax, and Ashley's sharp, impatient alto. "Don't see the point. Dax, Mom said just to confirm the pallet count." "Your mom's not the one whose name is on the invoices. Ash, this preservation order, that's not procedure. That's a goddamn lawyer. It's just that stupid stepsister, trying to make trouble. Mom will handle her." I slipped my phone from my pocket. I hit record. Video. I moved to the side door, the one under the flickering light. I tried the handle. It was unlocked, the heavy steel door groaning on its hinges as I pushed it open just an inch. The warehouse was cavernous, freezing. It smelled of cold concrete, old cardboard, and dust. The only light came from a single, bare bulb hanging over a small, makeshift desk area in the center, casting a pool of weak yellow light. I slipped inside, silent as a shadow, and ducked behind a massive pallet. 20 feet from them, the boxes were stacked 12 high, all of them bearing the same label: Apparel, Winter, XL Kids. Ashley had a clipboard. "Okay," she said, tapping her pen. 50 pallets in Bay 1, 30 in Bay 2, 20 in Bay 3, that's the 100, that's the inventory. We're done. She wasn't counting boxes. She was counting pallets. Dax kicked one of the boxes on the bottom of the stack. It made a hollow, rattling sound. 100 pallets of nothing. Ashley, this is insane. Your mother told me this was a simple pass-through. Now there are lawyers. She paid you enough, Ashley snapped. Just do your job. Get these loaded and moved to the dump before 7 a.m. Monday, before anyone from that law firm shows up. That's your job. I filmed her. I panned from her face, confident and cold, to the clipboard, then to the boxes. Right beside the stack of coats was another, smaller pallet. It was shrink-wrapped. Inside, I could clearly see the glossy, four-color print of the Harbor Grace Foundation gala posters. The logistics were all in one place. I captured it all in a steady, 30-second video. Ashley, giving orders, Dax, the nervous muscle, and the evidence, side by side. Fine, Dax grumbled. But after Monday, I'm out. I don't care what she offers me. Whatever. Ashley turned and walked toward the small office, her boots clicking. I'm just checking the utility receipts so I can tell Mom it's all buttoned up. She disappeared into the office. Dax paced, pulling out a cigarette, then remembering he was indoors. He kicked the box again. I held my breath. Ashley was in the office. This was my chance. I slipped back out the side door. My heart a cold stone in my chest. I didn't run. I walked, fast and silent, back to my car. I sat in the dark, my hands shaking so hard I could barely hold the phone. I waited. 5 minutes later, Ashley's Audi roared to life. She sped out of the industrial park without her headlights on, a dark shape disappearing toward town. Dax was still inside. He was the loose thread. I got out of the car again, but this time I went to the front of the warehouse. I found the utility meters, a large, industrial electric meter, its wheel barely turning, and next to it, a massive padlocked heating oil tank. I took a picture of the electric meter. The reading was impossibly low for a commercial warehouse, let alone one supposedly running cold storage, which requires massive amounts of power. I went back to the side door. I listened. Dax was on the phone. His voice was different now. Scared. No, you listen to me. She said it was a simple civil suit. I just looked it up. A preservation order? That's what they do before a raid. I'm not taking the fall for this. Man, I'm not going to jail for Elena Voss. I switched my phone to audio recording. I don't care what she said. I want another 50,000. No, I'm not waiting. I want it by Monday. We moved the last batch. Yeah, the last batch. Before the audit, we move it. I get the transfer, and I'm gone. I'm driving my truck to Mexico, and she can deal with the fallout. He listened. Fine, fine. But if that transfer isn't there, I'm taking these invoices, and I'm walking right into the Harbor Ledger office. You tell her that. He hung up. A string of curses. I heard him slam the office door. A filing cabinet drawer screeched open. I backed away. I had it. I got back to my car. My mind a steel trap of information. 1. Video of Ashley falsifying inventory. 2. Audio of Dax confirming the fraud, the impending move, and his intent to flee. 3. Photographic proof of impossibly low electricity usage for a cold storage facility. But I was missing 2 things, the lot numbers and the shipping label. I waited. Another 10 minutes. Dax's truck started. He drove out, his tires spinning on the packed snow, and headed in the opposite direction of town. The warehouse was empty. I gave him 5 full minutes, then I went back. This time, I walked in through the open loading bay. I turned on my phone's flashlight. I was alone with 100 pallets of lies. I went straight to the nearest box and tore it open. Empty. Just air and cardboard. I went to another. Empty. I used my phone to photograph the lot numbers printed on the side of the boxes. Lot HFG992A. It was almost poetic, a direct match to the Form 990 Tess had given me. I went into the small, squalid office. He'd left in a hurry. The desk was a mess of papers, takeout containers, and a clipboard with a stack of shipping manifests. I photographed them, all from North River Freight to Harbor Grace Foundation. all listing apparel coats, all signed by Dax Sutter. And then I saw it, a single, peeled-off shipping label, stuck to the side of the garbage can. It wasn't from North River, it was the label for the empty boxes, the ones shipped to Dax. I peeled it off. The sender, Red Dock Media, an advertising and print shop in Burlington. I scanned the barcode with an app on my phone. It took me straight to the Red Dock Media website, the same company that, according to the Gala program, had been a silver-level sponsor. Elena wasn't just faking invoices for coats. She was having her friends at an ad agency print fake labels for empty boxes and ship them to her ex-lover's shell company. The circle was complete, an airtight, perfect, closed loop of fraud. I took a picture of the label. I had everything. I sat in my car, my hands finally steady. I opened the encrypted messaging app Tess and I used. I created a new folder. I uploaded the video of Ashley, the audio file of Dax, the photos of the utility meter, the lot numbers, the Red Dock shipping label, and the falsified manifests. I sent it. My message was simple. They are destroying the evidence. Monday, 7 a.m. They are moving the pallets from storage 7. Ashley is coordinating. Dax is the vendor. This is everything. I put the phone on the seat, turned the key, and drove. I didn't drive back to my apartment. I drove to North Harbor. I drove to my father's house. It was almost 3 a.m. The house was dark, except for one light, the yellow glow of the porch light, and a figure standing on the porch. It was Graham. He was standing in the freezing cold, in his bathrobe, smoking a cigarette. I hadn't seen him smoke in 20 years. I pulled into the driveway. He didn't move. He just watched me. I got out of the car and stood on the frozen walkway, the snow crunching under my boots. He looked at me, his face illuminated by the single bulb, looking older and more broken than I had ever seen him. The red glow of the cigarette was the only color. He knew. He didn't know the details, the boxes, the fraud, but he knew. He knew the dinner had been a lie, and he knew I was not softening up. He took a long, rattling drag from the cigarette. He looked at the snow, at the lake, at anything but me. "Do you have to, Rowan?" he asked, his voice a hoarse whisper. "Whatever it is you're doing, is it necessary?" I looked at this man, my father, a silhouette in the cold, the man who had told me to try harder when I was assaulted in his own living room, the man who had let my mother's legacy be stolen and erased. The pain in my shoulder, now a dull, permanent ache, gave a sharp throb. "I have tried, Dad," I said, my voice as cold and clear as the air between us. "I've tried my whole life. I'm done trying." He closed his eyes. He didn't say another word. He just dropped the cigarette into the snow, where it hissed and died. I got back in my car and drove away. The snow was starting to fall again, thick and heavy, covering my tracks, but it was too late. The evidence was locked. The file was sent. The audit was coming. Tess did not wait. My encrypted file, sent at 3 a.m, landed on her device at 8:01 a.m. She filed an emergency motion to amend the preservation order. She did not just file public information requests with the town. She filed an action with the court, attaching the video evidence of impending evidence destruction. The judge signed it by 9. Elena received the email notification at 9:15, CC'd alongside the town council. I knew because I was tracking her. Not the AirTag, but her digital footprint, the one she had so carefully curated. Panic does not look like screaming. It looks like frantic, foolish activity. At 9:30 a.m., Elena logged into the Harbor Grace Foundation's primary bank account. She initiated a wire transfer, $150,000. The recipient, North River Freight. The memo, emergency cold weather supplier payment. It was the act of a cornered animal. She was trying to pay Dax the money he demanded, the money I had recorded him threatening her for. She was creating a new paper trail, trying to retroactively justify the old one. The bank's automated fraud detection system flagged it instantly, a $150,000 emergency payment from a nonprofit, which had just received a court order to freeze its assets, to a vendor incorporated 6 months prior. At 10 a.m., the phone rang in my father's house. I was not there, but I could picture the scene. Graham, in his recliner, the television on mute. He picks up. It is not me. It is not Tess. It is Mr. Henderson, the branch manager at Pine and Birch, the bank my father has used for 40 years. Henderson's voice would be apologetic, professional, confused. Graham, we have a situation, a transfer request from Elena, from the foundation account. It's very large, and it's irregular, especially given the court notice we received this morning. We cannot honor it, of course. Graham, are you aware of this payment? For the first time, my father was forced off the sidelines. He was no longer a spectator. This was not about feelings or family history or keeping the peace. It was about wire fraud. It was about his name, which was still listed as a co-founder on the original foundation charter. He was, at last, in the center of the conflict. Elena's next move was predictable. She did not call a lawyer. She called a reporter. At noon, an email blast went out from the foundation. A statement of transparency from the Harbor Grace Foundation. She had invited the Harbor Ledger and 2 local bloggers to the foundation's pristine office at 2 p.m. She was going to get ahead of the story. She was going to frame herself as the victim. I was there at 1:55. The office was bright, decorated in calming shades of beige and Harbor Grace blue. Pastries and coffee were set out on a sideboard. Elena stood by a small wooden podium, looking composed, if a little pale. She was dressed in a navy blue suit, the armor of a professional woman under siege. Ashley was by her side, glaring at the door, handing out glossy press packets. The reporter from the Ledger, a young man who looked bored, was already eating a croissant. Elena began. Her voice was steady, infused with a practiced tremor of righteous indignation. Thank you for coming. I called you here today because we, at Harbor Grace, believe in total transparency. It has come to my attention that, unfortunate and baseless, legal maneuvers are being made by a troubled, outside party. She did not use my name. She did not have to. These actions threaten to disrupt the vital work we do. They threaten to stop us from getting essentials to the children who need them most. She clicked a remote. A large screen on the wall behind her lit up. It did not show spreadsheets. It showed pictures. Pictures of children. Anonymous, smiling children, wearing brand new coats, old photos. I recognized from the website. This, she said, her voice dripping with carefully produced emotion, is what we do. This is what this attack is trying to stop. We will not let paperwork or legal bullying get in the way of our mission to serve. The Ledger reporter was writing, So, can you confirm what the legal action is? It's a private matter, Ashley interjected, her voice sharp. My mother is being harassed by a relative. It's sad, really. I have a question, I said. The room went silent. The reporter's pen stopped. Elena's eyes locked on me. Her smile froze. I stood up from the back row. I had not taken a pastry. Elena, you said you believe in transparency. This is not a private matter. This is about the public trust. You claimed on your Form 990 to have spent over $200,000 on cold weather logistics. My question is simple. How many coats did that buy? Rowan, this is not the place, Elena hissed, her mask cracking. This is the exact place, I said, my voice clear and loud in the small room. How many coats? Where are the delivery records? Which schools receive them? Which churches? Please, show us the manifests. Show us the proof of delivery. Elena's face, for the first time, went blank. She had no answer. She had pictures of children, but she had no data. We work through various community partners, she stammered. The logistics are complex. It's not a simple number. It is a simple number, I pressed. You either delivered the coats, or you did not. Which is it? This is an ambush, Ashley shouted, stepping in front of the podium. No, this is quality assurance. The back door of the office opened. Tess Marin walked in. She was not dressed for a press conference. She was dressed for court. She held a single, blue-backed document. She did not look at me or Elena. She addressed the ledger reporter. "Excuse me," Tess said, her voice cutting through the tension like a scalpel. "I have a statement. As of 9 a.m. this morning, a temporary restraining order has been issued by the court. It freezes all assets of the Harbor Grace Foundation." She then turned to Elena, and her voice dropped, becoming lethally cold. And as of 9:45 a.m., that order was amended, based on video evidence of a conspiracy to destroy evidence. The order now includes the immediate seizure and preservation of all contents within Storage Unit 7 at the Mill Point Industrial Park. Elena took a physical step back, her hand grabbing the podium for support. She looked like she had been shot. The reporter was on his feet, his phone's camera now recording. "Wait, destroy evidence? What evidence? What's in Storage Unit 7? Tess smiled, a thin, sharp smile. "We believe it's what the Foundation's logistics partner calls the final batch, or, as the case may be, 100 pallets of empty boxes." The Harbor Ledger's website exploded. The story was no longer about a family dispute. It was about fraud, empty warehouses, and a court-ordered seizure. The town split down the middle. Ashley took to social media, just as I knew she would. Her Instagram story was a tearful, shaky video, filmed in her car. I cannot believe what my stepsister is doing. She is a traitor. She is destroying my mother's life's work, all because of some twisted, pathetic jealousy. Please, pray for my mom. She is the victim here. It worked. For some, the comment sections of the online articles were a war zone. Elena is a saint. How dare she? Rowan Blake is a snake. But then others began to emerge. I always wondered where the money went. I tried to get a grant from them for my classroom. They were impossible. Wait, North River Freight? Isn't that Dax Sutter's company? The digital wall Elena had built around herself, the wall of good intentions and smiling photos, was crumbling. I did not engage. I went home. I was exhausted, drained. 2 days later, a small, padded envelope arrived in my mailbox, no return address. I opened it. Inside, wrapped in a paper towel, was a small, heavy cluster of old keys, a key ring, the kind my mother used to have, with a small, woven fob. There was no note. I knew, instantly, they were from Graham. It was his answer to my question on the porch. "Do you have to?" This was his reply. He would not stand with me, but he would not stand in my way. He was giving me the last of Maeve's things. I recognized the small, red-ribboned key from the bank vault. It was on the ring, but there were others, 2 larger, skeleton-style keys. I drove back to North Harbor, not to the main house. I drove to the old property, the land my father had sold. The A-frame cabin was gone, torn down by Elena, but the old, detached garage and a secondary shed still stood at the back of the lot, overgrown with weeds. My father still owned this small, forgotten parcel, using the shed for boat storage. I went to the shed. It was cold, smelling of lake water, damp wood, and gasoline. In the back corner, under a dusty tarp, was my mother's old pottery equipment, her wheel, her kiln, and next to it, a tall, oak filing cabinet. It was locked. One of the skeleton keys slid into the lock. It turned, the mechanism stiff with disuse. I pulled open the top drawer. It was full of her files. Maeve Hollis, my mother the artist, was also Maeve Hollis, the meticulous record keeper. It was all there. Her original letters to the bank, establishing the Hollis Scholarship, her original will, and then the files after the foundation was created. She had been watching Elena, just as I had. I found a simple blue spiral-bound notebook. Her handwriting was neat, precise. She was tracking the probate of her own will, even as she was dying. I saw the entry. April 3rd, Hollis Scholarship assets, $120,000, transferred to G. Blake, executor. Then, the next line. April 4th, G. Blake, executor, transfers $120,000 to Harbor Grace Foundation. She had documented her own erasure. But it was the next page that made my blood stop. It was a simple, hand-drawn T-chart. On one side, HG Ops, Harbor Grace Operations. On the other, Elena, Personal. She was tracking Elena's spending. There was a date, April 10th, a line item under Elena, Personal, a simple notation, white SUV. And next to it, $48,000. I remembered that car. Elena had driven it for years, a brand new, top-of-the-line white SUV. It had appeared right after my mother's funeral, a gleaming, white symbol of her new status as the lady of the house. My father had not bought it for her. She had, with my mother's money, with the scholarship money intended for medical students. I finally understood. My vision went sharp, the cold air of the shed disappearing. I looked at my mother's meticulous, angry handwriting. This was not just about greed. It was not just about fraud or paying off an ex-lover. This was about conquest. Elena had not just merged the scholarship. She had liquidated it. She had stolen my mother's legacy and turned it into a luxury car. She had, quite literally, been driving around in the stolen pieces of Maeve's life. This was never just about money. This was about eradication, and I was holding the receipts. With my mother's handwritten ledger open on my desk, the full, grotesque timeline snapped into focus. It was a story told in 4 parts. Part 1. Graham Blake sells Maeve Hollis's inherited land, the property she loved. Part 2. An anonymous benefactor uses that exact money to provide the seed capital for Elena Voss's new foundation. Part 3. The Hollis Scholarship. My mother's $120,000 legacy for medical students is merged into the foundation, where it vanishes. Part 4. Elena buys a $48,000 luxury SUV with the stolen funds, and then, years later, uses the now-established foundation as a pass-through to launder over $200,000 to her old lover, Dax Sutter, via invoices for empty boxes. Tess and the court had the fraud. I had the motive. Now, I just had to execute the plan. My job is quality assurance. I build test cases to find failure points. Elena was the product. It was time to run the tests. My first call was to St. Laurel's Church. Elena had built her entire winter coat defense on the backs of the local churches. I got Father Michael on the line. "Father," I said, my voice warm and professional. "My name is Rowan Blake. I'm doing a community audit on local philanthropic impact for a project. I saw that Harbor Grace listed St. Laurel's as a primary distribution partner for the winter coat drive." "Ah, yes, Miss Blake, Maeve's daughter. It's wonderful to hear from you. Elena is just a saint, isn't she? The work she does." "She is," I said. "Could you just confirm for my records the number of coats your parish received from the foundation this season?" There was a pause, the shuffling of papers. "Well, let me see," the priest said, his voice hesitant. "We received the promotional materials, beautiful posters. Really, we put them up, and we collected 3 bins of donations ourselves. But, we never received the main distribution shipment from Harbor Grace. We were told it was delayed. Logistics, So, to be clear, Father," I said, my pen moving across a legal pad, "the number of new coats you received from the foundation to give to children was 0. "Well, yes," he said, sounding troubled. "That's correct. 0. Test 1. Passed. The mission was a fiction." My next call was to Red Doc Media, the printer of the fake shipping labels. This time, I was Rowan Blake, QA manager at North Star Diagnostics. I got a bored clerk in accounts payable. "Hi," I said. "I'm conducting a vendor review for a potential new contract. I see you've done work for the Harbor Grace Foundation?" "Yeah, they're a client," the clerk said, clearly chewing gum. "Great. I'm looking at an invoice paid by an Ashley Voss, using a foundation card. Can you confirm the product? Hang on, I heard typing. Yeah, Voss. Paid the rush fee on it. 2. We did 5,000 gala programs. Oh, and 10,000 custom-printed shipping labels. Shipping labels? I asked, keeping my voice mild. Yeah, weird job. They were… Let me see the work order. Simulated apparel labels for shipping boxes. The invoice note says, to simulate coat labels for visual display boxes. She said it was for a big donor presentation, like a mock-up of the shipment. My blood ran cold with the audacity. She didn't just find empty boxes. She commissioned fake labels to create a fraudulent stage set. This was premeditation, in writing. And did you ship those? Yep, we used Green Mountain Transport. They moved the gala programs and the boxes of labels to a warehouse in Mill Point. Test 2. Passed. The logistics were a fraud. I recorded the call with the real shipping company, Green Mountain, who confirmed they had hauled nothing but paper, posters, and boxes of labels. They were not North River freight. Now for the public. I couldn't accuse. I had to ask. I created an anonymous profile and went to the North Harbor Community Forum on Facebook. I wrote a simple, anxious parent post. Hi everyone. This is a long shot, but my son's school missed the sign-up for the Harbor Grace Winter Coat Drive. If anyone's child did receive a coat, could you please share a photo of the pickup form or receipt? I'm just trying to figure out how to register for the next round. Thanks. The post sat for an hour. Then, the comments began. We signed up in October. Never heard back. My church said they were delayed. I called the foundation. They said they were out of stock. How are they out of stock already? Did anyone actually get a coat? The silence was deafening. I had crowdsourced the void. I took screenshots of the entire thread. Now, for the final piece of the puzzle. Elena herself. She was still under a preservation order, but she was arrogant. She thought she was being sued over a family squabble. She didn't know I had the fraud, the warehouse, the invoices. I needed to rattle her. I needed to build a mirror. I went to my managing director at North Star Diagnostics. Janice, I said, for the quarterly management training, I've developed a case study on nonprofit risk and compliance. It's a hypothetical. I'd like to present it to my team. Go for it, she said, barely looking up. My presentation was, if I say so myself, a work of art. I called it The Virtual Charity, a case study in fiduciary failure. It detailed a fictional organization, the Harbor Bay Fund, that used a related party shell company, River North Logistics, to fake invoices for winter apparel. I outlined how simple vendor verification and invoice audits would have caught it in 5 minutes. I presented it to my team of 12. I also knew that Janice's executive assistant, who had reviewed the slide deck, played bridge every Tuesday with Elena's gala co-chair. I accidentally left the slide deck, titled Nonprofit Fraud Hypothetical, on the shared network drive for 48 hours. The bait was taken. Tess called me on Thursday. She was ecstatic. Rowan, you are a puppet master. Elena is at the bank. Right now, she's with her accountant, trying to amend her tax records from the last 6 months. She's trying to reclassify the North River payments as consulting fees and gala expenses. She's panicking, I said, a cold, clean satisfaction settling over me. She heard the specifics of the fraud from the bridge game. She thinks she's covering her tracks. She's not covering, Tess said, her voice sharp. She's tampering with evidence. She is actively, right now, falsifying documents that are under a court preservation order. I'm filing for an immediate seizure of all records, original and altered. Elena thought my presentation was a warning. It was a trap. We now had her actively committing a new crime to cover the old one. The fallout was immediate. Ashley went on the offensive. She posted a new Instagram story. It was a photo of her and Elena, smiling, handing a generic cardboard box to a smiling, nondescript family. The caption, "While others spread lies, we do the work. This is what family traitors want to stop. Blessed Harbor, grace the truth." It was a good photo. It looked convincing, I saved it, downloaded it, and ran the metadata. The photo was taken in July, 2 years ago. It was from a summer food drive. I emailed the file to Tess. Exhibit A, defamation and fraudulent misrepresentation. Then, the phone call I had been waiting for. My father. His voice was a rasp. "Rowan." I waited. She's locked herself in the office. The bank is calling. The ledger is parked at the end of the driveway. Her friends, they aren't returning her calls. What did you do?" I presented the facts, Dad. "Facts? This isn't about facts," he yelled, and I heard the panic in his voice, the terror of a man whose quiet world was finally imploding. "This is your family. She's a wreck. You've destroyed this house. You're going to destroy this family." I stood in my quiet apartment, looking at the small, red-ribboned key from my mother's bank vault. I had carried it with me for days. "I'm not destroying anything, Dad," I said, my voice calm and low. "I'm just turning on the lights." I hung up. The case was airtight. The fraud was documented. The motive was clear. The cover-up was in motion. Tess had enough to win in civil court, and probably enough to trigger a criminal investigation. But it was not enough for me. I needed to close the loop. I needed to end this not in a courtroom, but in the family. I needed them to see the truth, all at once. I set the final trap. It was New Year's Eve. I sent a group text to Graham, Elena, and Ashley. "This has been a terrible year. I don't want to start the new one like this. I've made a reservation at Lakeside Ember for 8 p.m. tonight. Just the 4 of us. I have a gift, a proposal, a way for us to move forward. Please." The proposal was the bait. The gift was the hook. They would see it as my surrender, my white flag. They would come, expecting me to beg for forgiveness, to drop the suit in exchange for being allowed back into the family. Elena would come to watch her final triumph. I arrived at Lakeside Ember at 7. It was the most expensive, exclusive restaurant in North Harbor, all dark wood and massive glass windows overlooking the frozen lake. I spoke to the manager. "My table," I said. "I am recording an oral history for a private family archive. I need to place this small camera on the table. It's a family tradition." "Of course, miss," he said. I went to the table, the best in the house, in a quiet alcove. I placed the small, high-definition camera on the centerpiece, aimed directly at the 3 empty chairs. I then placed a small, discreet, professionally printed sign on the table, as required by law. "This table is being recorded for a private family archive." It was legal. It was visible. It was perfect. I sat down, my back to the wall. I ordered a sparkling water. At 7:50, I saw Tess walk in. She was wearing a dark suit. She didn't look at me. She took a small table by the bar, ordered a club soda, and placed a thick, blue-backed legal envelope on the table in front of her. She was not my friend tonight. She was my lawyer, and she was on the clock. I smoothed my napkin. The stage was set. The lights were on. The camera was rolling, and the actors were about to make their final entrance. They arrived at 8:03. Elena swept in first, wearing a black dress and a strained, brilliant smile. She was projecting victory. Ashley followed, looking smug, her phone already in her hand. My father, Graham, shuffled in last, his gaze fixed on the floor, a man being led to his own execution. "Rowan, darling," Elena said, gliding to the table. She saw the small, printed sign about the recording. Her eyes narrowed for a split second. "What's this? A family archive?" "A new tradition," I said, "for the new year, so we remember exactly what was said." She paused, but her arrogance won. She clearly thought she could control any narrative, recorded or not. She sat. "How quaint?" Ashley smirked. "Trying to catch us out, Rowan? That's not very New Year's of you." "I just want to be transparent," I said, echoing her words from the disastrous press conference. Graham sat heavily. He hadn't spoken a word. The waiter approached. We ordered water. Elena placed her hands on the table, A picture of maternal grace. This was her opening monologue. Rowan, I am so glad you called this dinner. This misunderstanding between us has gone on for far too long. It's my fault. I see that now. Christmas Eve. I was stressed. The gala. You surprised me. I was not myself. She leaned in, her voice dropping to a confidential, loving whisper, ignoring the camera. I want to apologize, truly, from the bottom of my heart, and I want to prove it. She reached for her purse, but I already knew the script. My offer still stands, she said. The seat on the Harbor Grace board. Let's put this unpleasantness behind us. Let's be a family. Let's start the new year united, together. It was a beautiful performance. She was offering me the keys to the kingdom, the very kingdom she thought I was trying to enter. She thought this was about power. Thank you, Elena, I said. My voice was calm, my hands steady on the table. That's a very generous offer, but before I accept, I just need clarity on one small point from the press conference. Oh, darling, let's not relitigate that, she said with a dismissive little laugh. No, it's just a simple QA question, I said. You mentioned the winter coats. I'm just trying to close the loop on the paperwork. Which school district, exactly, received the main shipment? And could I see the signed delivery manifests? Just for the new file I'm building. The smile on Elena's face did not falter, but her eyes went flat, cold. Ashley scoffed. Are you serious? You're auditing her, now? I just like to have my data in order, I said. Elena held up a hand, silencing her daughter. She gave me a look of profound, maternal disappointment. Rowan, you sound just like your mother. Always the details. Always the paperwork. It's New Year's Eve. Can't we just enjoy the moment? So you don't have them? I pressed. I will have my assistant send them to you, she said, her voice like ice. After dessert. The air was vibrating. The script was flipped. This was no longer her scene. On cue. I saw Tess stand up from the bar. She walked over, not to me, but to the head of the table, to Elena. She placed the thick, blue-backed envelope directly on Elena's bread plate. Excuse me, Mrs. Voss, Tess said, her voice professional, clear, and loud enough for the entire alcove to hear. I'm Tess Marin, counsel for Rowan Blake. This is a final civil ultimatum and a formal demand for a third party, independent forensic audit of all Harbor Grace Foundation accounts, effective immediately. Elena looked at the envelope as if it were a snake. She didn't touch it. You're serving me? Here? Elena hissed, her face white with fury. This is harassment. This is the last stop before we file for a full civil receivership, Tess said, not blinking. You have 48 hours to respond. Happy New Year. Tess turned, walked back to the bar, paid for her club soda, and left the restaurant. The silence that followed was heavy, absolute. I looked at my father. He was staring at the envelope. His hands, resting on the table, were shaking, a fine, uncontrollable tremor. He looked at Elena, his wife, the woman who was just unmasked as a fraud. Then he looked at me, his daughter, the one who had just detonated the bomb. He did not move. He did not speak. For the first time in my life, he did not rush to defend her. He just watched. You bitch! Ashley suddenly spat, her voice rising to a shrill cry. You planned this! This was a setup! You're trying to destroy her! You're trying to destroy our family! She half stood, her hand drawn back as if to slap me. Miss, the restaurant manager, a tall man in a perfect suit, appeared at the table instantly. Is there a problem? I must ask you to keep your voices down. My daughter is just upset, Graham mumbled, finding his voice. I'm not upset, Ashley shrieked. She? Ma'am, the manager said, his voice firm. Please, sit down, or I will have to ask you to leave. Ashley collapsed back into her chair, her face mottled with rage, tears of fury in her eyes, the camera, sitting in the centerpiece, recorded every second. The first act was over. Time for the second. I reached into my pocket, my fingers closed around the small, cold piece of brass. I pulled it out and placed it on the white tablecloth, between my water glass and Elena's. It was the small, ornate key from my mother's safe deposit box, the one wrapped in the faded red ribbon. Elena stared at it. "What is that? More of your evidence?" "It was in Mom's safe deposit box," I said, my voice very quiet, "along with her original will, the one that established the Hollis Scholarship for $120,000. Elena's face went from white to gray. "She wanted that scholarship to exist, Elena," I said. "She didn't want her name to be erased. She didn't want her money merged into your foundation, and she certainly didn't want you to spend it on a new car." Elena reared back. "How dare you? You have no—" She was about to say proof, but she stopped. She knew I did. She tried another tactic. She laughed. A short, sharp, ugly bark. "You're pathetic. Rowan, living in the past, obsessed with your dead mother. This is ridiculous." She waved her hand, a grand dismissive gesture, as if brushing away a fly, brushing away my mother, brushing away the key. And right then, as if she had been waiting for that exact gesture, Elena's phone, sitting on the table beside her plate, began to buzz. It wasn't a ring. It was an angry, vibrating, insistent summons. She looked at the screen. The mask of casual dismissal vanished. Her face crumpled into genuine fear. It was the bank. She snatched the phone. "What?" she barked into it, all pretense of decorum gone. She listened. Her eyes widened. "What do you mean?" "Temporarily frozen." "What signals?" No, that was a payment to a vendor. An emergency payment." She was listening again, her knuckles white on the phone. "Domestic money laundering? Are you insane? That is my foundation. You can't— No, you. She slammed the phone down on the table, the crack echoing through the restaurant. She was breathing hard, her chest heaving. The call, the one triggered by her own panicked attempt to pay Dax, had been the final, fatal mistake. She looked at me, her eyes filled with a pure black hatred I had never seen. "You," she whispered, "you did this." "I didn't," I said, and my voice was clear, and it was loud, and it was for the camera. It was for the archive. "You did, when you stole my mother's scholarship, when you paid your ex-boyfriend with money meant for children. This is not about my money. Elena, this was never about me. This is about the money of every single person in this town who trusted you, every person who wrote a check, thinking they were helping someone, when they were just funding you." All eyes turned to my father. He was the swing vote, the jury. He looked at Elena's ruined face. He looked at the legal papers on her plate. He looked at the small, red-ribboned key on the table. Slowly, as if moving underwater, Graham Blake stood up. He did not speak. He walked away from the table, toward the lobby. "Graham!" Elena cried, a note of real panic in her voice. "Graham, don't you dare walk away from me. Graham!" He didn't look back. He disappeared into the lobby, and I could see him through the glass, standing by the coat check, his phone to his ear. He was making a long, one-sided call. Ashley was weeping now, openly. "Dad, come back! Dad!" I just sat. I waited. After 5 minutes, he returned. He walked past Ashley. He walked past me. He walked to Elena. He reached into his jacket pocket. He pulled out a plain, white, business-sized envelope, a bank envelope. He placed it on the table, directly in front of her, on top of Tessa's legal papers. "Graham, what is this?" she whispered. "That," he said, his voice a dead, empty monotone, "was the bank. I just spoke to Henderson. That is my notarized revocation of all power of attorney. I'm off the accounts, the house, the joint accounts, all of it. You're on your own. Elena." He looked at me, Not with love, not with apology, just with a profound, bottomless exhaustion. "You," he said, "you turned on the lights. Now I have to live in the glare." He turned and walked out of the restaurant. Ashley scrambled to her feet, grabbing her purse. "Dad! Dad! Wait for me!" She ran after him. And then it was just me and Elena. The dinner was shattered. The pretense was gone. The truth was laid bare on the white linen tablecloth. A lawyer's threat, a stolen key, a revoked power of attorney, and a small, white sign, dutifully informing her that all of it, every second, had been recorded. Elena stared at the items on the table. She looked at me, her face a ruin. I stood up. I placed my napkin on the table. I had not taken a single bite. "I'm not eating dessert," I said. I walked out of the restaurant, past the bar, and into the freezing, clear night air. The wind off the lake was brutal, but it felt clean. It wasn't over. But the war had been won. The final, public surrender was all that was left. A year is a long time. It is 12 months of depositions. It is 52 weeks of legal maneuvering. It is 365 days of watching a reputation, so carefully constructed, crumble into dust. The civil lawsuit did its work. The town of North Harbor, facing a public relations nightmare and potential legal exposure for its own lack of oversight, commissioned a full, independent audit of the Harbor Grace Foundation. The results, when released, were catastrophic. The money trail to North River Freight was undeniable. The lack of any delivered goods was confirmed. The Harbor Grace Foundation was effectively defunct. Its assets, what was left of them after years of Elena's administrative overhead, were frozen and, by court order, seized. Elena was not, as of yet, a criminal. The State Attorney General's office was conducting an investigation into Dax Sutter, who had, as promised, vanished, and the financial irregularities, but these things move slowly. Justice, I learned, is not a lightning strike. It is a slow, grinding erosion. My father moved out of the glass house 2 weeks after the New Year's Eve dinner. He now lived in a small, furnished condo on the river, a place I vaguely remembered from my childhood. He and Elena were separated. The divorce was pending. A quiet, brutal negotiation. He had called me once, in February, his voice sounding thin. He did not apologize. He just said, "I hope you are satisfied." In March, a small, dented tin box arrived at my apartment, my mother's recipe box. There was no note, no return address, but I knew it was from him. I opened it. Beneath the faded, handwritten cards for apple pie and beef stew, I found a false bottom, and under that, wrapped in oilcloth, were the original, pristine bank receipts, the establishment of the Hollis Scholarship, the wire transfer out of the trust, and the deposit slip into the brand-new account of the Harbor Grace Foundation. He had kept them. He had hidden them for almost 2 decades. It was the closest to a confession I would ever get. Ashley, predictably, had secured a new job at an advertising agency in Burlington. Her social media was a carefully curated performance of a life wronged, full of backlit photos captioned, "Sometimes, the people you should be able to trust the most are the ones who betray you, rising above." I never replied. I used the receipts. The civil court awarded the remaining assets of Harbor Grace to me. As the representative of the estate my mother's scholarship had been stolen from, it was not the full $120,000, not after all this time. It was $81,000. I took none of my father's money. I took the settlement, added a significant portion of my own, and I founded the Hollis Rowan Trust. Tess, now a junior partner at her firm, met me for coffee last week. "You won, Rowan," she said, raising her mug. "It's a total legal victory. You got the money back. You destroyed the foundation. She's a social pariah. It's over." "It's a legal victory," I said, watching the steam rise. "But it's not the truth, not the public truth. The town thinks she was just a bad administrator. They don't know why she did it. They don't know she erased my mother to build herself." "That's not what the courts are for," Tess said gently. I know, I said, but that's what tonight is for. Which led me here, Christmas Eve, 1 year later. I stood in the parish hall of St. Laurel's Church. The air was thick with the scent of beeswax candles and fresh-cut pine. It was 8:30, and the hall was full. The 9 o'clock Christmas Eve Mass was the biggest service of the year, but tonight I had provided a prelude. I had prepared my final gift. I sent 2 invitations, one to Graham, at his new condo. Dad, the Hollis Scholarship is back. I wanted you to be there. One to Elena, at the glass house on the lake, which she was now forced to sell. The inaugural Hollis Scholarship presentation, St. Laurel's, 8:30 p.m. You are invited to see Maeve's name formally restored. I knew she would come. Her pride would not allow her to be absent. She would have to witness it. I had spent the last month turning my evidence into an exhibition. Along the main wall of the hall, I had placed 3 tall, professionally printed display boards. I had not embellished. I just presented the data. The first board was titled, The Hollis Scholarship, Est, 1999. It had a beautiful smiling photo of my mother, Maeve Hollis, and a high-resolution copy of the bequest from her will. The second board was titled, The Journey. It was a simple, devastating flowchart. Box 1, 1999, $120,000, Hollis Scholarship Trust established. Box 2, 2001, assets merged with Harbor Grace Foundation. Executor, G. Blake. Box 3, 2001, $48,000, withdrawn from fund for foundation operating expenses. Beside this, I had placed 2 documents, a copy of the bank ledger from my mother's recipe box and a copy of the vehicle registration for a new white SUV purchased by Elena Voss 1 week after the withdrawal. Box 4, 2001-2024, fund dissolved, no scholarships awarded. The third board was titled, The Restoration, 2025. It listed, by name, the 5 first-year medical students at the University of Vermont who were the inaugural recipients of the restored Hollis Rowan Trust. The townspeople were gathered. They were silent. They read the boards. They looked at the copy of the car registration. They looked at the dates. I saw Mr. Miller, my father's old neighbor, read the flowchart, turn to his wife, and whisper, My God, she bought it. They understood. The former donors, the ones who had given Elena thousands, were clustered by the coffee urn, their faces hard. They had been lied to. Now, they saw how. Graham arrived first. He was thinner, and he wore an old wool coat I hadn't seen in years. He stood at the back of the room, by himself, and just stared at the boards. He looked at the photo of my mother, then at the bank ledger. He did not look at me. At 8:40, Elena arrived. She still wore white, a magnificent, cream-colored wool coat, but the mask was gone. The radiant, benevolent smile of Saint Elena was gone, replaced by a tight, pale, brittle expression. She was not here as a pillar of the community. She was here as a defendant, answering a summons. Her face was a ruin of anger, and beneath it, a stark, profound fear. She walked in. She saw the boards. She saw the receipts. She saw the car registration. Her head snapped toward me, her eyes burning with a hatred so pure it was almost beautiful. She saw the donors, her old friends, turn to look at her. They didn't speak. They just looked, and then they turned away. At 8:45, Father Michael went to the small podium. Friends, thank you for coming. Tonight, before we celebrate the birth of our Savior, we celebrate a resurrection of a different kind, a legacy, lost and now found. Maeve Hollis was a light in this community, and now, her daughter, Rowan Blake, has brought that light back. He gestured to me. I took the microphone. I looked out at the crowd. I saw my father, his hands shoved deep in his pockets. I saw Elena, standing rigid by the door, a prisoner of her own making. Thank you, Father, I said. My voice was clear. It did not shake. My mother, Maeve, believed in this town, and she believed in helping others. She created a scholarship to do that. For many years, that scholarship was lost. It was, as the board shows, merged into the Harbor Grace Foundation and absorbed by administrative overhead. I did not use the word stolen. I did not use the word fraud. I did not need to. The data on the wall was screaming it for me. Tonight, I am simply and profoundly honored to announce that the Hollis Scholarship is back. The funds are secure, the trust is endowed, and the mission my mother started is finally beginning. The 5 students listed here will receive their first checks in January. The hall was silent. And then it began. The sound, deep, resonant, and slow. The bong of the main church bell, tolling from the tower. It was 8:55. The call to Mass. The sound vibrated in my chest. I paused. I looked at Elena. Her face was ashen. I looked down at my watch, the one I had used to record her. It's time, I said into the microphone. I have one last thing, a final gift, to welcome my mother's name back to this town. I stepped forward from the podium. The church bells were still echoing, a slow, heavy heartbeat for the room, tolling the 9th hour. I walked past the front pew, past the shocked faces of the donors, past the display boards, until I stood directly in front of Elena. She was trapped by the door, a wall of townspeople on one side, me on the other. I held out the gift. It was wrapped in simple gold paper, a perfect echo of the one from last year. "What is this?" she whispered, her voice a dry rasp. "Another one of your tricks?" "A replacement," I said, "a symmetrical exchange." Her hands were shaking, but she took it. She tore the paper, her movements jerky and rough. None of the surgical precision she had displayed a year ago. She pulled out the box. It was another digital photo frame, identical to the first. She stared at it, her breath catching, as if she was holding a snake. "This one is already on," I said, my voice quiet, but it carried in the sudden, deep silence of the hall. She found the power button. The screen lit up. It was not the laughing, young picture of my mother. The first image was a scanned document, the front page of the newly established Hollis Rowan Trust, my signature clear and sharp next to Tess's. The screen changed. A picture of my mother, Maeve, holding me as a toddler on the old dock, both of us laughing into the sun. The screen changed again, a high-resolution copy of the final court order, paid to the order of the Hollis Rowan Trust, $81,000, from the seized assets of the Harbor Grace Foundation. It swiped again, Maeve, covered in clay, smiling in her art studio. It swiped again, the original bank receipt for the white SUV, the one my mother had filed away, the price matching the withdrawal from the scholarship fund. "It's a mirror, Elena," I said. "It's the truth of what you did, in a loop, forever. The scholarship documents, the court orders, the receipts, they are all linked on the display boards. They are all public record now." I looked at this woman, this hollow woman, who had built an empire on the erasure of another. 1 year ago, on this night, you took the gift I gave you, and you slammed it into my shoulder. You hit me. You left a mark. A collective gasp went through the hall. I heard my father, at the back of the room, let out a choked sound. "And right at that moment, Elena," I continued, "I started a recording on my watch. I still have that audio file. I have your voice. I have my father's voice, telling me to try harder. I kept it for a year, thinking I would need it to prove what happened. But standing here tonight, I realize I don't." I gestured to the display boards, to the car registration, to the shocked faces of the donors who had once adored her. "I don't need that recording. The truth is loud enough." As if summoned by the word truth, Tess Marin stepped forward from the shadows near the doorway. She was no longer just an observer. She held one last, final envelope. "Elena Voss," Tess said, her voice ringing with the cold, clear finality of the law. This is the signed, final consent decree from the court. The Harbor Grace Foundation is, as of 9 p.m. tonight, permanently and irrevocably dissolved. She laid the document on the nearby refreshment table, as if it were just another item on the menu. All remaining liquid assets have been transferred to the Hollis Rowan Trust, as stipulated by the settlement, and this decree includes a binding, lifetime injunction. You are permanently barred from serving as a director, officer, or fiduciary for any registered nonprofit organization in the state of Vermont. Forever. Elena staggered, her hand gripping the edge of the table to keep herself upright. You can't. It's done, Tess said. Before Elena could find her next words, a new voice spoke. Mr. Miller, my father's neighbor, the man who had toasted Elena at that awful Christmas dinner. He was also, as it happened, the head of the town's select board. He looked pale, but resolute. The town of North Harbor has also completed its emergency review, he said, reading from a prepared statement. His voice shook with a quiet, civic anger. We have voided all winter logistics contracts with North River Freight, effective immediately, and based on the overwhelming evidence of financial malfeasance presented to us, we have formally referred the matter of these irregularities and the actions of Mr. Dax Sutter to the state police for criminal investigation. This is a lie. A shriek from the side door. Ashley. She pushed her way in, her face blotched and furious. She must have been waiting in the car, a getaway driver for a battle that was already lost. You're all believing her? She's a snake. My mother did the work. I posted the proof. We delivered those gifts. We did. She was frantic, appealing to the crowd, her phone in her hand, holding it up like a shield. Look, here. This is the work she's trying to stop. She held up her phone, displaying the Instagram photo, the one from 2 years ago, the one of the food drive. I nodded to Father Michael. He clicked the remote for the projector, the same one Elena had used in her disastrous press conference. The projector screen lit up, illuminating the wall above the displays. It showed Ashley's Instagram post, blown up 12 feet high. Then, the image changed. It was a screenshot of the photo's metadata. File name, IMG 4092, JPG. Date created, July 14th, 2 years ago. Camera model, iPhone 11. That photo was taken in July. Ashley, I said calmly. It was for a summer food drive. Those boxes are full of canned goods, not coats. You are lying. Again. The crowd, which had been murmuring, went dead silent. The sound of Ashley's lie, exposed so clinically, was deafening. She looked at the screen, then at the faces staring at her, and she crumpled, her bravado vanishing like smoke. The silence was broken by a single, slow set of footsteps. My father. Graham Blake walked from the back of the hall. He passed Elena. He passed me. He went to the podium and took the microphone from my hand. He looked small, old, and fragile in his worn wool coat. He stared at the display board, at the smiling picture of his first wife. Maeve, he whispered, and the microphone carried the broken, aching word across the room. He took a breath. Maeve. She always wanted light. She said the A-frame had so much light. She used to say I lived in the shadows. She just wanted light. He turned, not to the crowd, but to me. His eyes were red, and they were watering. Today, he said, his voice cracking. My daughter, Rowan. She turned on the light, and she was right to do it. He looked at the floor. That night last year, I told her she had to try harder. He looked up, and his gaze was clear, and it was a public confession. I was wrong. I was a coward. She had been trying her entire life. I was the one who needed to try harder. He set the microphone down. He did not come to me. He did not hug me. He simply walked back to his spot at the back of the room, alone. It was not forgiveness. It was not an embrace, but it was the truth. Elena was shaking, her whole body. She reached out, her hand trembling violently, and put the digital frame down on the table, as if it were burning her. The screen cycled. It landed on a picture I hadn't seen in 20 years. Maeve, young, holding my hand. I was maybe 5. We were both wearing yellow raincoats, laughing at the camera. A simple, happy memory. Not a tragedy, not an accusation, just a memory. I stepped back to the podium and took the microphone. I looked away from her, to the people of North Harbor. The Harbor Grace Foundation is gone, I said. But the generosity of this town is not. Your donations are now where they belong. The Hollis Rowan Trust is active, it is transparent, and it is real. From this night forward, 5 students, every single year, will get the help my mother intended. Your money is finally doing the work. The church bells began to toll again. Louder this time. Bong, 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 the call to Mass. 9 p.m. The snow had begun to fall outside, thick, silent flakes against the stained glass windows in the back. I saw Tessa's phone light up. She looked at it. Her eyes widened. She looked at me, across the room, and she nodded. A sharp, sudden nod of pure victory. I saw the email preview on her screen, a state seal. From the Office of the Attorney General, Civil Agreement, and Criminal Referral, Sutter D. Voss E. The civil agreement was accepted. The criminal file was now open, not just on Dax, on Elena. Justice was no longer just erosion. The lightning strike had come. I looked at Elena. She hadn't seen the email, but she saw the look on my face. She knew. This was the end. I spoke my last words to her, not to the crowd, just to her. I tried my whole life to be a daughter in this house. Elena, I tried harder and harder. Tonight, I just tried to be the right person. That's all. She said nothing. She looked at the floor. Then, with a stiffness, a broken, rigid pride, she pulled her white coat tight around her. She turned and walked to the door. No one touched her. No one spoke to her. The crowd parted. A silent, human sea, letting her pass. The space they gave her. The silence that followed her. The collective turning of their backs. That was the true sentence. That was the community's judgment. She walked out the door, into the snow, and was gone. My father left through a side door. I was alone at the front of the room. The bells tolling. The people quietly filing past me toward the sanctuary for the Mass. I walked over and picked up the digital frame, the one I had brought. I held it to my chest. The screen was warm. It showed my mother, smiling. I walked out the main doors, into the courtyard. The snow was falling fast, a clean white sheet, covering the old tracks. The wind was so cold it cut my skin. But I felt warm. My shoulder didn't ache. I was free. Thank you so much for listening to my story. I'm curious, where in the world are you listening from right now? Let me know in the comments so we can connect and share our thoughts. Please subscribe to Lila Revenge Stories. Like this video, and if you can, support us by hitting that hype button so this story can be heard by more people.